Hi everyone, so today we're going to do our quiz review on Chapter 8, Section 7 and Chapter 8, Section 8. As a reminder, your quiz is tomorrow, Tuesday, June 2nd. So the first thing we're going to do is go over our classwork assignment from Friday. So I had you guys factoring these problems completely. So in the first problem, we had 12x to the fourth plus 18x to the third plus 36x squared plus 54x. Now, when you notice when each of these terms has an x attached to it, before you can go ahead and do factor by grouping, what I would recommend to you guys is factor out the greatest common factor that they all have in common. That way it kind of makes it a little easier at the end. So all the terms here have an x in it, and the greatest common factor here is 6x. So we pull out the 6x and then we factor the rest of the problem. So it becomes 6x times 2x to the third plus 3x squared plus 6x plus 9. Now, what we do is, if we want to check that this factoring was correct, we would distribute the 6 back to each and every single term here, and then we would get the original problem back as our answer. Okay, so once we get to this step, we now can take this yellow part, what I've highlighted, and factor that using grouping. And then the 6x, box it, start, do something with it because we're going to come back to it in the very last step. So we have 2x to the third plus 3x squared plus 6x plus 9. We're going to break it up into two separate problems, 2x to the third plus 3x squared and 6x plus 9. Now we're going to find the greatest common factor between both of these, factor it like we've been doing, and then we're going to take it from there. So the greatest common factor between 2x to the third and 3x squared is x squared. The factored form of this becomes x squared plus 2x plus 3. Done with factoring over here, can't do anything else, so we leave that. Now over here on the right hand side, we have 6x plus 9. Greatest common factor between those two is 3, and our factored form is 3 times 2x plus 3. Remember, we want these to be exactly the same, so we have 2x plus 3 times 2x plus 3. So we rewrite that once at the bottom, so we have 2x plus 3. Then we group what's on the outside of the parentheses together, so we have x squared and a 3, so we rewrite it as x squared plus 3. And then that 6x that I told you we're going to come back to, we now write that in front. So our final answer is 6x times 2x plus 3 times x squared plus 3. In this one, we have 45w to the fourth minus 36w to the third plus 15w squared minus 12w. All the terms have a w in it, should say a w, and the greatest common factor between all of 4 of these is 3w. So we factor out a 3w and rewrite the new problem. So now we have 3w times 15w third minus 12w squared plus 5w minus 4. Now we could take what's in what I've highlighted in yellow, and we can use this factor with grouping. And then remember this 3w, we're going to come back and use it at the end. So we have 15w to the third minus 12w squared plus 5w minus 4. Going to factor by grouping, so we're going to break it up into two separate problems. And when we do that, we got to find the greatest common factor between 5w to the third and minus 12w squared. Greatest common factor between these two is 3w squared, and the factored form is 3w squared times 5w minus 4. Now over here on the right hand side, we have 5w minus 4. What's the greatest common factor between the two? 1. So our factored form is 1 times 5w minus 4. We have our two sets that are the same. We rewrite it once at the bottom, so we have 5w minus 4. Group what's on the outside times 3w squared plus 1, and then bring down that 3 from the beginning. So our final answer is 3w times 5w minus 4 times 3w squared plus 1. So now we have, in this one, 32k to the 4th minus 16k to the 3rd plus 12k squared minus 6k. All the terms have a k in it, and the greatest common factor between all four is 2k. So we factor out our 2k, so now we're left with 2k times 16k to the 3rd minus 8k squared plus 6k minus 3. Now we have over here, I've highlighted in yellow what we can do to use factor by grouping for, and then this 2k, we're going to come back to it at the end. So now we have 16k to the 3rd minus 8k squared plus 6k minus 3. Factor by grouping, so break it up into two separate problems. We have 16k to the 3rd minus 8k squared. Greatest common factor is 8k squared, and the factored form becomes 8k times 2k minus 1. And the right hand side we have 6k minus 3. Greatest common factor is 3. So our factored form becomes 3 times 2k minus 1. We have our set of twins, so we rewrite it once. We have 2k minus 1. Next, we're going to group what's on the outside of the parentheses and put them in 1. So we have 8k squared and 3. That groups together becomes 8k squared plus 3. And then we have that 2k from the beginning, and we rewrite it. So our final answer here is 2k times 2k minus 1 times 8k squared plus 3. So now we're going to do our quiz review. So in 8.7, we had factoring special cases. So in this problem, we have a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. Now this symbol right here, this is plus or minus symbol, so I just rewrote it like this, so we can have the problem a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, or we can have a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. So what we're going to do for these problems is we're going to take the square root of a and we're going to take the square root of b. Then we're going to multiply 2ab to see if we get our positive 2ab back or our negative 2ab back. Remember, if you have just a variable, the square root of a variable squared is that variable itself. So just say you had j squared, the square root of j squared is just j. So we have a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. When we factor it, our factored form, our answer is going to look like a plus b squared. You're basically multiplying the problem by itself. And then we also have a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. When we factor it, our factored form is going to look like a minus b squared. Essentially, what are we doing? Multiplying the problem by itself. And then if we have a squared minus b squared, what we're going to do is we're going to take the square root of a and b. If we get a whole number, we can proceed with the problem. And if not, we have to factor out a common factor first and then do the problem as normal. Then we can use the difference of two squares. So this is our difference of two squares problem. A squared minus b squared. What's it going to look like in the end? A plus b times a minus b. So whenever you're missing that middle term, basically, it's going to be the difference of two squares. So you're going to have one parenthesis going to have plus, one's going to have a minus. So let's try this first one out. We have h squared plus 8h plus 16. We need to first find a and b. What's a? H, right? Square root of h squared is h. And b is 4. How do we get 4? Square root of 16. Next step, we got to do 2ab. So we're going to take 2 times h times 4, and we get 8h. We want to make sure that this number we get here matches this number in the middle. It does, so now we can go ahead and say h plus 4 times h plus 4 is going to give us this answer back. If we wanted to check, we would just FOIL this here, and it does work out. So our final answer is h plus 4 times h plus 4, or we can write it as h plus 4 squared. Here we have 36x squared minus 60x plus 25. Okay, what are we going to do here? First, we got to find what a is. Just because there's a number in front of the variable, you could still do it. We're still going to take the square root. So square root of 36 gives me 6. Square root of x squared gives me x. So our a is 6x and our b is 5. Next, we got to make sure that 2 times a times b gives us our middle term back. So we're going to have, remember, because this one's minus here, so I want to say negative 2 times 6x times 5. When we go ahead and do that, we get negative 60x. These two match up, so I know I can continue on with my problem. So my answer is going to look like 6x minus 5 times 6x minus 5. Now you can leave it or you can rewrite it in this form. 6x minus 5 squared. So let's try this one. 9x squared minus 40. There's no middle term here, so this problem is a difference of two squares. What do we got to do? Take the square root of a, square root of b. A is equal to 3x and b is equal to 20. So our final answer is going to look like, I rewrote that wrong. So our final answer is going to be 3x plus 20 times 3x minus 20. How about this one? We have 80x squared minus 45. Now if we do on our calculator the square root of 80 and the square root of 45, you're going to get decimals, are not exact numbers, so we can't use that method. The first thing we have to do is find the greatest common factor. Greatest common factor here is 5, and then our factored form becomes 5 times 16x squared minus 9. Now what's inside the parenthesis, we can use the difference of two squares. We could take the square root of 16 and we can take the square root of 9 and get a nice whole number. So our a is equal to 4x and our b is equal to 3. So now we rewrite it as 1 parenthesis 4x plus 3, 1 4x minus 3, and bring down our 5. So our final answer here is 5 times 4x plus 3 times 4x minus 3. Now we're going to do our Chapter 8, Section 8 review, factor by grouping. So the first thing we're going to do is break it into two problems. We're going to find the greatest common factor of the first two terms and the greatest common factor of the second two terms. We want the parentheses to be the same, so we want to have a set of parentheses that are identical to each other. So remember, we want them to have one set of twins. So in this one, 15x to the third plus 40x squared plus 3x plus 8. We're going to break this up into two separate problems. 15x to the third plus 40x squared and 3x plus 8. What we're going to do is we're going to find the greatest common factor between these two separate ones and then factor it. So let's try it. The greatest common factor between 15x to the third and 40x squared is 5x squared. Factored form becomes 5x squared times 3x plus 8. We're done over here with this problem. We don't need to worry about it now. We're going to move on to this side. Greatest common factor between 3x and 8, 1. And the factored form becomes 1 times 3x plus 8. We have 2 3x plus 8. We want that. So we're going to rewrite it once. 3x plus 8 at the bottom. And then we're going to group our 5x squared and our 1 together. So 5x squared plus 1. So my final answer now becomes 3x plus 8 times 5x squared plus 1. In this one, we have 18x to the third plus 45x squared minus 8x minus 20. Same thing. Break it up into two separate problems. We're going to find the greatest common factor between 18x to the third and 45x squared. Greatest common factor is 9x squared, and the factored form becomes 9x squared times 2x plus 5. Now we're going to find the greatest common factor between negative 8x and negative 20. Now remember, when you have two negatives, your greatest common factor will be negative. So our greatest common factor between these two is a -4, and our factored form becomes -4 times 2x plus 5. What do we have here? We have 2x plus 5, and we have a 2x plus 5. We have our twin, so we rewrite that once at the bottom, 2x plus 5, and then we have 9x squared and a -4. We group those together, so our answer now is 2x plus 5 times 9x squared minus 4. In this one, we have 5x to the 4th minus 5x third plus 20x minus 20. Now, before we go ahead and use factor with grouping to do this, do we notice how each and every one of these terms has an x in it? When that happens, factor out the greatest common factor first. It just makes factor by grouping a little easier because then it'll be in the simplest form. So all the terms have an x in it, and the greatest common factor between all of this is 5x. So our factored form becomes 5x times x minus 3, or x to the third, minus 1x squared, plus 4x minus 4. Now what we have here in yellow, we can go ahead and use factor with grouping form. And then this 5x that we have over here, we're going to come back to it at the very last step. So we're going to use factor with grouping. X to the third minus 1x squared plus 4x minus 4. Breaking it up into two separate problems. X to the third minus 1x squared and 4x minus 4. So we're going to find the greatest common factor between the first one, and that is x squared. And the factored form becomes x squared times x minus 1. And then we have over here 4x minus 4. Greatest common factor between these is 4, and our factored form becomes 4 times x minus 1. We have our x minus 1 and our x minus 1. They are the same, so we go ahead and rewrite that once. So we have x minus 1, and then we go ahead and group our x squared and our 4 together, and we get x squared plus 4. And then remember, I told you in the beginning we had that 5x, so we now bring that down to the bottom. So our final answer becomes 5x times x minus 1 times x squared plus 4. As always, here is our pet of the day. This right here is Corey. Corey is Mr. Capizzi's dog, and he is a beach bum. He is looking forward to the summer. So tomorrow, as a reminder, is your quiz on 8-7 and 8-8. As a reminder, your test packets are due to me by next Tuesday, which is the 9th. If you have any questions, be sure to send me an email. Have a great day, guys, and good luck tomorrow on your quiz.